Good morning. Welcome to a hearing by the Volusia Forever Advisory Committee. I'm Marianne Connors. I'm chairing the committee. And with that, we will have a call to order. We have a special request this morning. One of our members is unable to be here for medical reasons. And at the end of roll call, I will ask that the committee take a vote to allow Mr. Fieser to participate and vote remotely. So with that, please call the roll.
Marianne Connors.
Here.
Wanda Van Dam.
Here.
Steve Crump.
Here.
Gerald Fieser is with us virtually. John Gamble.
Here.
Jessica Gao.
Here.
Derek LaMontagne.
Here.
Derek Orberg.
Here.
Suzanne Schreiber.
Here.
Everyone is present.
Thank you. And with that, I will ask that the committee vote to allow Mr. Fieser to participate remotely and to vote remotely.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We haven't allowed people to vote remotely in the past. So I'm a little confused as to why we would do that today.
Well, clearly there's no reason we can't. I think it's the discretion of the board whether or not to allow this. And if
No, the attorney made this statement at our very first meeting. We didn't allow, actually, we didn't allow Mr. Orberg to vote when he wasn't here.
so, well, we do not have our attorney here right now. He's available remotely. Please. Okay.
Hey,
Russ.
can you hear me, Marianne? This is Russ.
Yes, Russ.
Hey, sorry. I also have the same thing that's going around with everybody else. So I apologize. I'm not there in person. Ms. Schreiber, good question. The difference is in Mr. LaMontagne versus Mr. Fieser is that Mr. LaMontagne was absent due to his own personal issues. It wasn't due to a sickness or an illness. And so in this case, when it's due to a sickness and illness, an emergency, the board may vote to allow a member to participate virtually. The statute does allow for that.
Thank you. Anything further? No, all set. Okay, with that, can we just, I don't think it needs a second. May we just entertain a vote?
I'll make a motion that we allow Gerald Fieser to vote remotely.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposing? Like sign? No opposition. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fieser. I'll be listening for your voice. Okay, with that, we will have a review of the March 10th meeting minutes.
I've got a question on the minutes. In mine, pages 7, 8, and 10 are missing the motion and the vote results in the minutes. It's a typo. There's lines, but no action is recorded.
Okay. Jessica, can you help us with that?
I'm sorry.
Can you help us? Was it just a processing issue?
I'm sorry, she was speaking to me about a public speaker. What page are we on?
Pages 7,
7, 8, and
8,
10.
and 10, it's cut off, there's lines, there's no motion, second, or action vote record for those for those properties.
Yes, sir. I'll have to go in and find out what happened to the file.
I believe, Madam Chair, and through the chair to Mr. Crump, when we combined them into one PDF, there must have been a recognition of the text error, but we will resend them to the committee because it
Okay.
is there.
Okay, we'll do a resend and we can vote at a later time. That's okay?
That's fine.
We'll just defer the adoption till everyone's had a chance to review them.
Can I make another comment? Real quick? I think my name was spelled wrong on at least one spot, so please correct that too.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. And with that, we will go to public participation. I have 3 requests. Please, if you wish to speak when your item comes up, you can just let me know. Otherwise, you can come forward now. Chris Fogelstrom regarding Old Empire Groves.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chris Fagerstrom with Pond Company, formerly with Environmental Consulting and Technology. I've worked with the city of Lake Helen on water quality and water quantity improvement projects since 2003. And I'm here representing the city today to talk a little bit about Old Empire Groves and some of the criteria that it was evaluated on for this process. Specifically, criteria 9, which addresses recharge and its beneficial use for the property. This property is situated near Lake Helen, proper Lake Helen, around Lake Harlan itself. On your mapping from the district recharge map, it shows as a medium recharge area. I've done quite a few projects around Lake Helen itself, recharge projects, water quality improvement projects to improve water quality going into Lake Helen. And the area does have a pretty good recharge in that area. We haven't conducted any studies on this specific property, but it does have a pretty good bit of recharge. Also in the mapping, it shows Lake Harlan as a large lake in that area. It's actually quite small now. It's a pretty small lake. It's pretty much 3 ponds. So that area is not included in the recharge in that mapping of the recharge. So I think it should be considered that there is additional recharge on that property that isn't really accounted for. And I think another really important point to make is the spring shed. One of the major issues in the spring shed is water quality. And this property right now is an ag. It's used for cattle and sod production. And taking that out of production would significantly improve the water quality of the recharge going into the spring shed. So that's extremely critical right now for the springs, is that groundwater quality going into the springs. So I think that really should be considered as a major factor for this property, as it would be put into conservation and not ag producing. Fertilizers would be significantly reduced on the property, completely reduced, and that water quality of the recharge would really be improved. Secondly, again, a quality issue. Criteria number 13 has to do with the wetland quality. This property, as I've stated, is in production for ag, and removing that ag production would significantly improve the quality of the wetlands. The criteria actually says the potential for a high functioning wetland. So I think that this property, with removing that sod production right along the buffers of the wetlands and adjacent to the wetlands, would improve the quality of the wetland dramatically and really get a nice lift in that functioning system of the wetland system. So those are the 2 points I really wanted to make. Those, when the application was submitted, they were submitted as a yes. Staff changed those to no. I think they really should be reconsidered and potentially be shifted back to a yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
James Evans Jr.
Good morning. I'm James Evans. Was born in the land and been involved in agriculture since I was in high school. Graduated from high school in DeLand. I'm currently in the Cattlemen's Association, Volusia County Fair, Farm Bureau, all the above. I know several of you. For those of you that don't know me, I've been in the well drilling business here since I was 10 or 12 years old. So I'm familiar with all this, and I've got this piece of property. I want to thank y'all for considering it. I've bought a piece of property that I want to retain in ag. I'm tired of going around the corner and seeing every little piece of property scraped to the dirt with every tree taken off of it. And I want to conserve this piece of property so that my kids and grandkids can enjoy it and don't have to see apartment houses and housing development everywhere. So I appreciate your consideration. And if you got any questions when Mr. Teller brings it up, feel free to ask me.
We'll know you're here. Thank you, sir. Steve Costa? Okay, Steve, we'll talk to you later. Okay. With that, project updates, old business.
Good morning. Tim Telfer, Land Acquisition Manager for Volusia County. Can you move to the next slide on the PowerPoint? So we're looking to catch the committee up. At our March 10th meeting, you placed a number of properties on the A list. We have taken a look at each of those properties that were on the A list and tried to come up with a plan for every property that you've placed on the A list. And that plan, to the greatest extent that we can, involves partnering with other organizations to try to share the financial load. But I'll give some further detail if there's any questions for the items that are listed above. I do want to point out that the joint partnership with the St. Johns River Water Management District that we've presented in the past has been discussed in front of the County Council, is moving for a closing July 14th. We're in the final stages now of reviewing closing documents. We have a number of financial partners up there that I can get into detail about, not the deal mechanics, but just listing and generally describing how their programs operate. We've had some good correspondence with the USDA on a particular agricultural easement project that we're working on. We have some very good dialogue with the Florida Forever staff. So they have a program called Triage over there. So when you hear the term Florida Forever, it's actually a large group of people. There's two sides to it. One is the application side. The other is the triage side. The triage side is actually the acquisition staff, and they make a determination on how the state is going to spend their dollars. We have 4 projects that we're corresponding with them on. We're just working out some of the details to get them as organized as possible for their staff. We feel very optimistic that those will move forward very soon. We do have another one that's actually in the appraisal offer process right now. We have taken one of the A-list properties and we're actually going to start a Florida Forever application. So what that means is when you think about the Florida Forever project areas, and we show you the map later, you're going to see the 5 Florida Forever projects within Volusia County. Volusia Conservation Corridor, for example, is one of those project areas. If you're within a Florida Forever project area, the state can move ahead immediately. They don't need to do any type of administrative work to proceed with the acquisition process. If you're not within a Florida Forever boundary area, it's a bit of a different process. You either need to generate a new application and start a new Florida Forever project, or you can try for a boundary amendment. So we are going to start an application for a new Florida Forever project to try to capture one of the A-list properties and try to find some funding, partnership dollars. We have 2 appraisals that the Volusia County staff is taking the lead on right now that we've ordered for 2 of the pieces that are on the A-list. And that leaves us with roughly 5 projects that we don't have a good partner lined up for right now. And we had 1 property that was sold off the A-list. This was the Baker piece. Were there any questions about project updates?
Question, the I noticed that we have an asterisk here, one sold and action required by committee. Do those go together?
No, I will move on to the action required by the committee next. I just wanted to pause and see if there were any questions on that summary.
Okay.
Okay, with no further questions, the item that requires action on the committee's charge here, if you can move to the next slide, please. So one of the projects that was actually on the B list was this Penland and Pomeranke parcel. This is roughly 19 acres. We're in the city of Ormond Beach. This is Airport Road on the west side, Tomoka River on the east side. We were approached by the St. Johns River Water Management District. They have FDOT mitigation money. They're looking to spend it in this basin. There's the potential for actually a three-way partnership with the Water Management District and the City of Warman Beach and the Volusia Forever program. It's in the very early stages right now. There has been some work done by the Water Management District already. They are ready to compose an offer and see if it is going to be accepted. The action required on this committee would be a recommendation to move this project from the B list to the A list. We would take that to the county council, and that would enable the Volusia Forever program to move forward as a partner. The split that's proposed is 60% St. Johns River Water Management District, 20% City of Ormond Beach, and 20% Volusia Forever.
Okay. And is it, does it remain that the property would become part of the park and be managed as part of the park?
It would be managed by the City of Ormond Beach as an extension to the park.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah. Is there a chance that Ormond and St. John's can just do it on their own? I mean, because when you guys asked them before, they weren't interested at all. And now it seems that they're at least 20% in, right?
Them as in the City of Ormond Beach?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, I can't speak for the City of Ormond Beach and how much they're willing to put in financially. We have exhausted the limit of the St. Johns River Water Management District's financial participation. They're capped because of the DOT mitigation money. So there's a deficit to make up there somewhere, and I can't speak for Ormond and how much they can put in.
Okay, I just didn't know whether it was a dead deal that they could only do 20. If they could do 40, we don't even need to do any action, right? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I have a question, Tim. Can you remind us as to what the score was on this one?
We're going to have to research that information. I don't have that readily in front of me right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did the City of Ormond Beach agree to manage this in perpetuity? They're going to take over management.
This is a verbal agreement with their staff, so they actually still have to formally present it to the city council.
Okay.
But yes, their staff has said that they would like to manage it as an extension to the park.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving it to the A list, again, is a issue of eligibility and pursuit. It still has to have further action before it actually is a deal.
Correct.
No. Jessica. Yes.
I think I remember the last time we discussed this, we talked about if it was functioning as a park, it may be an option for a collaboration with Echo. And I don't know if they've had a chance to discuss it at all. I think I'm remembering, I don't have the minutes, when we went back and forth on if it was recreation versus conservation uses.
So this would be largely conservation. And because of the two funding sources that we're talking about today, both Volusia Forever, which really drives land preservation and conservation, as well as that DOT mitigation money. That's intended to have land preservation as its primary focus. They do allow some passive recreation opportunities. What you would see there is that there is already an unauthorized bike trail that's on the property. So that would be captured as part of the management requirements, but there really wouldn't be much beyond that. It would be hiking and biking trails.
Anything else?
Okay, so Nick's looked back in the old minutes, and it looks like it scored a 10 of 19 when it was previously presented.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to move this project from the B to the A list?
I'll make a motion that we move the property from the B list to the A list in light of the partnership possibilities.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam,
Yes.
Steve Crump,
Yes.
Gerald Feaser. Gerald, are you with us? John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. And we'll try to reestablish contact with Mr. Feaser. Okay, with that, we have new business.
We do have one more slide if we could move forward one more.
Okay.
We were requested by the committee to put the nominated properties onto a map for your review. Before you today is the map that was requested. If there's no further questions, we're going to move on to the next issue.
Any questions regarding the
Yeah, I
nomination?
had a question.
Sure.
Oh, actually, well, okay, it's on the next map, I think. All right, so this is the ones that were, oh no, these are this is the one. I didn't see the property that I think we had discussed. Maybe it's just under a different name because they're kind of small, but I put in a nomination myself for one, and it was a willing seller, so I wasn't sure if it was between maps, but I didn't see it, at least by the name I know it as, so is that on here? This is the one on the Spruce Creek Road?
So if we've received a willing seller letter back from the owner, that's going to be processed in the next eligibility cycle for the Volusia Forever program. So we've already moved it to cycle 2 if we've received the willing seller letter.
Okay, but it wasn't in either map this time.
It may not be captured in today's meeting as an application. If it came in, while we really have about a 2-week time period ahead of this meeting where we can't accept new information or add it into the agenda. We're already processing the agenda and all the backup material at that time, and we just can't bring in new projects. So if we have received a new willing seller application from that nomination, it'd be in the next cycle.
Yeah, I'll comment on that later, but again, this map was just for the ones that you received nominations regardless of willing seller, correct? I mean, well, actually, most likely without willing seller because the other ones with the willing seller you have covered. So I'm just saying it should be on one of these two maps. All the things that were nominated, I believe, should be on either we have 2 different maps we're looking at today. One for the ones we're voting on and ones that, we had requested last time that I appreciate everyone's support of that. So all I'm saying is I think that one's missing. Maybe some other ones, I'm not sure, regardless of if it's shown at the next cycle. That's all.
Okay.
Can you advance the slide, please? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move on to the application eligibility review procedures. So in brief, we are in Resolution 2021-134. This is section 5, parts F and G. Now, we've been through this before. This is the meeting where we review the applications and determine the eligibility. And that's the charge of the committee this morning, is all the applications that are before you today are going to be determined to be eligible or ineligible by the end of today's meeting. Couple of things to remind the committee of. One of the most important is the resolution requires that a decision to move a property to that eligible pool requires 5 committee members to vote in the affirmative. We have these primary site ranking criteria that we've shown on the slide here. This is directly out of the resolution. When we talk about these applications, the majority of them are going to be what we call environmentally sensitive lands applications. So they're going to require at least 10 of 19 in your judgment. The forest and farmlands applications, these are agricultural easement applications. They're only going to require 7 of 12, and it's a different scoring system. And we trust that you've all taken note of that when you've done your review and have the proper scoring sheets in front of you. Staff scores are advisory. We understand that the committee is going to do their own independent scoring here. We present them to you for consideration. Our scores are based on the best available data that we have at the time that we do the review. Some information changes over time, and you'll probably hear today that some of the applicants have some disagreement on the way we've scored some of these items. Any questions about our charge this morning?
No, if nothing further, we'll proceed.
Okay, the next slide shows the applications that we're going to consider today. We've simply listed them in acreage order. And I'm ready to move on to the first slide. First slide is Riverbend Ranch Reserve. This is a fee simple application. The staff has scored it an 11. We have an acreage listed here of 1,276 acres. It is within the Volusia Conservation Corridor, and it is adjacent to the Deering Preserve at Deep Creek. And with that, we'll stand by for any questions.
Who would our partner be on this? Potential?
So this is, you're asking almost a tactical decision on our part, because our best partner would be the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. If we go with Florida Department of Environmental Protection as a partner, that means they're going to hold title to this property. Now we could set up, a minimal fee lease agreement with the state and be designated as the manager. But we still have some decisions to make on who is going to be the lead on this acquisition and whether it makes sense to partner with another organization or not. There will be certain applications presented to the county council where Volusia Forever will be going alone. We may not always have a partner. We are going to look for them wherever possible, wherever it makes sense to partner. But at this time, we don't have a partner identified, although there are some conversations going on.
Okay, and do we anticipate then, if it's acquired, is it becoming part of the Deering Creek management?
Take that back.
Hello, Nick Dunham, Land Management. The county would be the manager at this time of this property if acquired. The Deering Preserve at Deep Creek is directly adjacent, and we could probably have some sort of overlapping management there as far as property. Whether it's going to be treated as two separate tracts, that would be determined at a later date.
Okay. Thank you. Wanda?
Could we go back to the map showing this property a second, please? I'm familiar with the property from the road and from the river, and I noted on the river side, there is a corner piece that looks like it's not part of the property. Is that just a mapping error, or is that piece actually separate and belongs to a different owner?
So at the time that we created this map, that chunk, if you're talking about the piece in the southwest portion of the property?
Yes.
That was under a different ownership.
It still is under a different ownership?
Talking about that very bottom piece down there is a slice that wasn't part of the property. I don't know who, right on the very bottom next to the river.
Yes. So for the minutes, that's Mr. Ashlock, the property owner, who had commented that that piece down in the southwest corner that is the subject of our conversation is still in private ownership.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I have a question. What access rights through that property, if that's owned by an individual, what would they have?
So that's a complicated question. We have not researched the title for that property. It's possible they have an access easement, or it's possible they have an easement by necessity. But if Volusia County became the landowner here, we would certainly work with that landowner, that private landowner, to ensure that they could access their property. We wouldn't prohibit them from accessing their property.
That's if they have legal access today. Okay. Shoreline Road, is that a public road? No.
So,
The landowner, you nodded your head. Was it yes or no? It's a private lane.
Private.
So, and Mr. Ashlock, you're welcome to come up to the microphone if there's further information that is.
Sir, could I ask you to, thank you, thanks.
You got to come up here. Let's clarify what property you're saying is not part of it. Is there a way to point to something, to make sure that
right.
piece right there. Yeah, I always meant to look that up and see who owns it. I don't know if the state owns it or who owns it, but it's not part of my survey, so evidently I don't. The access to the property is you come off of 1411 Osteen Maytown Road. You come off it, and then there's a 30-foot easement that crosses the bike path and the railroad track right there. But the road shoreline is what some places call it, is a 20-foot private road, 10 foot on my property, 10 foot on the 8 adjoining property owner lots, those 5 or 10 acre lots there. And then it stops.
Okay. So public access then would depend on what is then negotiated in terms of that easement.
There will be discussions regarding access, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Tim, I've got a question on process. Are we going to, I can't remember how we did it last time. Was it a motion to approve it as eligible and then we rank it, or how do we do that?
So today is just eligible.
Today is just eligible, no ranking.
We'll have a meeting in August where we'll determine.
Thank you very much.
If I may, just for a point of clarification. So the motion will be in the affirmative to make that this property is eligible, and then there'll be a roll call vote, and each of you will say, yes, we believe it's eligible, or no, it is not. As you can see on the screen here, we'll take the score in real time, and you'll be able to see if the property is eligible or not.
Okay. Jessica?
Just a question on the overall location map, if we can pop back to that. Thank you. I know that on the ecological link, we said it's not connected between 2 existing conservation lands, technically true. But I see the Palm Bluff Conservation Area to the north is there, and then there's a small strip of conservation area between Palm Bluff and this site, and the rest looks like major wetland system. So I was just wondering if we knew what the status of the property just north of Maytown Road was, because it would seem to have a very large connected wildlife and wetland corridor if we preserved both of those.
So I have to be careful. If we're talking about the same property to the north of this piece, we do have an application that's come in that you'll see in the future.
Great.
Tim, didn't we have one in the last go around? Isn't there one just on the north side of
You put a
Hey,
piece
Towns?
of property on the east, well.
It's
there-
on the east side of the canal or the Deep Creek. So.
I got to apologize, I jumped the gun on your question.
Okay.
So let me back up. You were asking on the north side of the road there. There was a piece that was on the north side of the road and that was sold off.
Oh, that's the Baker
Yes.
piece.
That is
Okay,
the Baker
Okay,
piece.
okay. Thank you.
I move we make Riverbend Ranch eligible.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Derek?
Yes, just a quick question maybe for staff or maybe the applicant. So will that land or when was that land that looks cleared on the map? When was that last kind of cleared? Is it being let to regrow at all or any of those? There's just two little like chunks that are kind of, I guess, for farming or, yeah, if we need to replant it, I'm just curious.
Now, if I can answer, when I bought the property, those pastures that you see there were all left unattended for years and big old wild bushes growing on them. All we did is clear them, reseeded, bahia, fertilized. There's cattle out there now. So any clearing that you see on there now, any pastures are the same pastures that were on there when I bought it. They're just in better shape.
Yeah, no, it's good to know. Just, we might, I don't know, have to turn it back into forest land if that's kind of part of the goal. I'm not sure. But of course, the property looks great overall. I mean, it's a large piece on the water. So I definitely think it should be supported here. So that's all.
Okay. No further discussion? Roll call vote?
Mary Ann Connors,
Yes.
Steve Crump,
Yes.
Gerald Feaser, Gerald, are you with us? John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
All right, next up for your consideration is the Evans property. It is a forest and farmlands application. It's about 123 acres, and it is adjacent to the Deep Creek Preserve that is currently owned and managed by the county.
Tim, do we have any representation for this property today here?
Mr. Evans is in the audience this morning.
Okay, and this is for a conservation easement.
It's an agricultural easement. This is 7 of 12.
That's right. Mr. Evans was very clear. He wants to see this preserved for posterity. So we just don't have more buildings out there. Okay. Jessica.
Just a question on practice. I think it meets the criteria, but when we do an ag easement, that wetland doesn't look like there's much of a buffer. I don't know if when we go through that process, do we discuss adding a buffer area to the active wetland line, or if we would leave it exactly the footprint it is today?
So we're going to take a look at the BMPs for agriculture out there and take a look at how much upland buffer is adjacent to that wetland. And then we have some biologists on staff. We'll make a determination at that time.
Perfect.
I move the Evans property is eligible.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote?
Mary Ann Connors,
Yes.
Steve Crump,
Yes.
John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek Lamontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, item 3.
So, thank you. Then there we are. Next application for your consideration is Walk-Up Timber. This is another forest and farmlands application, essentially an agricultural easement. Staff had scored it an 8 out of 12. It's 100 acres in size. We're not within an acquisition target area, and there was no adjacent conservation property. I did receive a letter from Mr. Shar, the landowner here, just supplementing some of the 12 questions that we had on the list there. But I do want to emphasize that staff has scored this in the eligible category. I can go over those questions if the committee wishes. It's at your discretion.
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
So in particular, he's identified number 7, and he makes a statement that there are number of species of concern that have been observed on the property: black bears, eastern indigo snake, gopher tortoises, and fox squirrels. Number 8, now he's listed a number of soils that are on the property for a response to question number 8. However, question number 8 is a little bit more challenging in that it emphasizes, the way number 8 reads, it emphasizes what are called prime, unique, and important soils as defined by USDA NRCS. So we have a map layer there that we feel comfortable with staff's recommendation on that item. Number 11, there is a succession plan on the property, and number 12, they do have a BMP plan on the property also. So of those items that were mentioned by Mr. Shar, the only one that would really come into play is question 7 regarding threatened and endangered species. We had put an unknown when we scored it. Simply, we didn't have any data. Mr. Shar has provided his anecdotal observations on the property.
I'm just curious, I see the landing strip there, Lafayette Landing, which is like a private airport, is my understanding. Is there any impact or relationship between this property and that activity? Do they need access? Is there any issue there in terms of getting to Lafayette, or do they have a separate access?
Oh, okay. So if I understand, you're asking about access to the property.
To this property, and does it in any way involve access to the Lafayette Landing airstrip?
Tim, I'll address. So as you can see that there's a piece of the road that gets to the airstrip that comes across this property. And according to our GIS person, this was a map drawing error, so it shouldn't come across this property.
Okay, that answers it. Thank you. Wanda?
No, I was just going to say, if there's no other questions, I'll move that we put this property, that we vote this property eligible.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mary Ann Connors,
Yes.
Steve Crump,
Yes.
John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek Lamontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next on the list is the Old Empire Grove property. This is a fee simple application. 74 acres, is not in an acquisition target area and not adjacent to any other conservation area. Staff score was an 8.
Can I ask the applicant to come up at this time?
Good morning. My name is Steve Costa. I'm here representing the property owner. And I'd like to give a little light on the background of the property.
Please.
Excuse me. So this property was formerly a grove for many years. And after the freezes in 1986, the family cleared the property and we started operating it as a cattle. And recently, sod became a lucrative agricultural pursuit also, and we started using it for sod production. As you can see, the property is broken up into multiple parcels, which are owned by different family members. And as of late, with the real estate market, the family wishes to sell the property. My background is I am a developer, broker. In the last 3 years, I've sold over $35 billion worth of land transactions. And I do have active developer builders looking at this property. City of Lake Helen, many residents of the city of Lake Helen are passionate about their city. They desire to keep this property open as green space within their city. They look at it as an integral part of their property. Lake Harlan, which is the sister lake of Lake Helen, is the center of the property. And it is a unique geographical feature because it's connected to Lake Helen, which was created by, named by Henry DeLand and settled. We scored an 8 on the staff report. And there's some, I think, some features that I'd like to bring some more evidence to discuss further with you guys. Specifically, which is one of the city's engineer already brought up, number 9. And we do feel it is a beneficial recharge area and can help replace degraded freshwater supplies. Right now it's agricultural. As I stated, we do have offers to buy the property for development. The property is zoned for single family residential development at 2 units an acre. And in the city of Lake Helen, this would be a septic tank system because there is no sewer. And we feel that putting this property in conservation and agree this would be better suited as a recharge area than homes with septic systems. And so we feel that that is a way to look at it also. It's just not a cow pasture that you're looking to buy, but you're actually preserving open space, which is one of the primary functions of this ordinance and the county putting aside the money is to preserve open space. So this is an opportunity to save this property for the city of Lake Helen and surrounding Volusia County residents to enjoy in perpetuity. The number 13 was also ranked a no. And, you know, the Lake Harlan does have the opportunity to become a highly functioning wetland system. As the water levels have come back over the recent years for Lake Harlan, it is a refuge for many birds, wildlife. There's alligators and storks, wood storks, and lots of species of wildlife that use that lake. And it is connected to other lakes in the area. And even though maybe not by a land bridge, birds fly and they need ponds that don't have development around them to nest and reproduce and feed. And so I think that's something you should also take in consideration. It's not linked, but it does provide habitat for wildlife and bird life. The final scoring I'd like you to reconsider that the staff is number 19. And this is a funny question because it's where no is a yes, yes is a no. City of Lake Helen is your potential partner on this, and I don't think they plan on spending a lot of money on restoring the property. And I think they probably just want to preserve it as open space. And so I was questioning why it would, this would require a massive amount of restoration. It's simply removing the cattle, letting natural grasses and vegetation to reincorporate the property over the years. So I wasn't sure about that no. So those were the 3 points that I wanted to bring up today. And I think that if you reconsider some of those, it can get you to the minimal 10 score to get this property eligible. So if there's any further questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone here from Lake Helen? Please. Representing the city, please. Okay. Got it.
Okay. So yes, I'm from Lake Helen. I've lived there for 30 years. I'm also a real estate agent. But this land is iconic, old Florida, beautiful land. I sent this morning I had very short notice on this. So this morning I went out and took some photos and a little video, which I emailed. Maybe they were going to put it up. But the water is home to many threatened, I can tell you what they are too, special concern and endangered species. We actually have a individual who hobbies in bird watching. Okay, here we go. And I'm sorry, this is taken with my iPhone. If you can zoom in, there's little tiny ducks that are just starting to wake up to the left. If you zoom in, can you zoom in even more? They're over here on the left. You really have to be there. It's all waking up. Birds, I have a video that will pan to the right. The birds fly in, they're migratory birds. This is a migratory path. We have sandhill cranes. These are threatened. Sandhill cranes. We have bald eagles that have been there for years. I've taken photos of them myself. We have a wood stork, which are endangered. Little blue heron, white ibis, those both are of special concern, and the osprey live there of special concern, and the snowy egret, special concern. We have anhinga bird, red shoulder hawks, many, many kinds of hawks that are there. Great horned owl, belted kingfisher, blue heron, swallowtail kites that frequent the area, tricolored, can't even read my own writing. I scribbled it down so fast. Tricolored heron, wood ducks. There's little wood ducks that you don't see in a normal lake where there's people. This area, is the video available? No?
No, ma'am, unfortunately, it won't play.
Oh, is there another photo? Because this is only a small portion. The water goes that way. Here we go. It's a little, okay. So can you make it go that way?
Unfortunately, it's only in your email.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
it
so
won't download.
that area, if you zoom in, there's a bunch of white birds and there's many, many, many more birds. They start out there in the morning. And a lot of those are the ibis and the egret and the birds like that come and go. And as I was filming that this morning, there was more flocking to it, those starting to wake up. There's many, many more. There's also wildlife because of this pristine water that is not have a lot of people around it. These birds have been coming for years, and there's also bobcat, deer, turkey, barn owls. There's bear actually been seen there. So I really hope that we can conserve this land. It should be protected and preserved for its intrinsic value and natural habitat for many.
We can hear you now, Gerald.
Wonderful, thank you.
for many threatened and endangered birds, not to mention the other forms of wildlife that live there. We just don't want to see it ruined by development. And I'm a real estate agent, but no, it's just precious land for our area. We're not right up against the St. John's. This is what we have there, and this is what the wildlife has. So I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone from representing the city of Lake Helen in terms of their interest in partnering on this?
They're not here, but I will tell you that their city administrator has met with us at the staff level multiple times, was even in yesterday.
Okay, so is there at least an interest in a financial contribution?
The city has committed to 10%.
Okay. I'm not really familiar with the equestrian center. The interest seems to be to link these two. Can you speak to what that activity is and how they might relate?
Based on our conversations with Mr. Evett, that there would be a linking, but this would be a passive park for the city and residents to enjoy. That's their goal here. It would not be an extension of the equestrian center where horses would be grazing.
Okay.
It's my understanding.
Thank you.
Is the city looking at maintaining this as well?
Yes, they are.
Do they know what goes into maintaining something like that? If you don't run cattle on it?
Well, I think we've been very transparent with our municipal partners that if we enter into an acquisition in partnership with them, we will require a management agreement that we all sign off on, so that we make sure that our investment in conservation land is protected. And so that's a conversation we have with all of our partners. So they would either need to hire someone who is skilled in land management to develop a plan, or hire our staff to help them do that, as well as manage it.
Jessica?
A technical question for the county. On item number 8 for our qualifications, if we listen to Pond Company's testimony that it is a recharge area, and I know the map shows medium and high recharge area. Number 8, when it says geological features that protect water quality or enhance water recharge, would soil makeup count as a geological feature?
So question number 8 says, does the property contain springs and or other unique geological features that enhance environmental resources, protect water quality, enhance water recharge, and or protect the aquifer? So there is a corresponding map that goes along with that question. I do want to let the committee know that when staff scores these applications, we have a number of individuals in the room. One's a biologist, the other is the director of the environmental program here at Volusia County. And we've also tried to maintain consistency in the way we answer all these questions. Particularly on number 8, when we answer that question, there's an emphasis on springs or other unique geological features. This is intended really to identify. We emphasize geological when we answer that question. So soils hasn't been the primary driver in answering it. Number 9 is really where we get into the recharge potential based on soils.
Mary Ann?
Yes,
Can I
sir.
ask?
I'm sorry.
Let me put my opinions out there. I'm not that interested in purchasing a park for the city of Lake Helen. I don't see anything all that special about this property to merit changing its current ranking. It's nice, but it's not outrageously good. It's surrounded by development. Looks like it's a place that ought to be developed.
I think that one of the challenges I saw here was that when Volusia Forever was reestablished, kind of opened a door to some of these, what did we call them, Vista properties. And so it's new. It's new, and I'm not sure it meets that thought, but that was the only way I could understand it in terms of qualifying. Otherwise, I agree. It looks like what it is. It's supposed to be the pasture, and someday it may be something else. So I'm struggling a bit. We've also looked for higher participation with our partners. So, comment?
I actually had a question.
Question?
You brought up soil. What was grown on this property? Because it says Empire Grove, and has the property ever been sprayed with chemicals in general? I'm curious to know.
So right now, I understand there's cattle on the property. I'd have to defer to the owner on history of any agricultural use beyond that.
So I would, as Mr. Acosta said, when he stepped to the podium, this was a grove at one time until the 80s. So I'm sure that there were, but as part of our due diligence, if the committee were to deem this eligible, as we do environmental assessments, which would include testing of the soil.
Question?
Yeah, just a few questions. One, that Lake Harlan, so it did look like it's used by some birds, and that's good, but at least on one of these maps, yeah, I'm just trying to determine, I guess maybe the history of the lake. Was that originally like dredged, as far as anyone knows, or is it kind of natural, or it's impossible to know? Because yeah, I didn't know if maybe when they made it agriculture that was like the stormwater pond, or that they just chose that kind of. That's my first of two questions, just history of the lake. And the second question is, would perhaps the owners be willing to split the property if, maybe part of it is better? Because there's, yeah, I agree, maybe most of it might be, not what we usually look for because it's just open.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered
But yeah, so I guess would the owner possibly be willing to split? Not that I can make that, say which is which today, but like, is that a future possibility?
So again, this is Steve Costa, representing the owners. To answer your first question, I believe the family purchased the property in the 1940s. It was then an operating grove. There is some evidence that the lake was used for irrigation, but there was a pump and well put on the property that has been there since I've been around. In fact, after the groves froze, I dug it up by hand, which was a fun summer. In respect to the flexibility in purchasing, we have sold property for conservation in the past, the St. John's Water Management District. We've been very flexible. I understand how to structure these deals and work with other funding partners. But to do that, we have to get it eligible first. And so we are flexible in how we structure the deal. And we are flexible in maybe selling off portions of this property for conservation. So there is maybe a partial meet in the middle way we can do this. But I think the first step is to get us over the hump and create an eligibility.
Great, thank you. Just one last comment. So if you got 10% of the funding from the city, you already got a little 10% parcel you could break out there. Save that. I'm kind of joking on that, but yeah, thank you for those answers. And I mean, I think it's worth considering maybe that, as we saw in our packet, the city come into at least 10%. Maybe they could go higher. I'm not sure, especially if it's something that is kind of unique from the perspective of the residents, that they like that. I think that would be something visible that, you know, Volusia Forever would be able to say, hey, we help something visible that people can see, that is natural area. Again, it's not paved or anything. So, you know, I'm not, you know, I would not support it if it was just, you know, big parking lot. It still is grass and bushes, and I saw some trees there. So I think I do support at least making it eligible, even if it ends up being on like a B list later. That's worth it to consider for now, in my opinion.
I feel we should hold to the conditions which we set forth early in the program. I don't think it meets the conditions that we set forth, so it's my thoughts on it.
Sir?
I'm James Evans. I'm still the same person.
Mhm.
I've owned property adjoining this parcel that you're talking about. I've lived in Lake Helen since 1960. To my knowledge, that lake has never been dredged out. It was an orange grove when I was a kid, and it's an overflow for Lake Helen Lake. When Lake Helen Lake gets real high, it drains over the road into there, and those ponds will raise 20 feet in a short period of time, you know, in depth. Is also that, if speaking from a recharge point of view, that is the biggest recharge area in Lake Helen for water going back into the aquifer. The water drains into there because on either side, we have a drainage where the drain goes out, goes into Casadega Lake on the west and goes into Deep Creek Swamp on the right. So all the water that is captured in this area goes back in the aquifer. So, you know, it's critical. And certainly, I think you know my feeling on it. I don't want to see houses there. But the equestrian center is right there on the west side of it. And the goal is to put paths through there and have walking paths and landscape it with trees and everything. So it'll be a nice path to add to the path that's at the equestrian center. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, any further questions?
I have a question. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, Gerald?
Is there a BMP on that project or property currently, the best management practices for the agriculture for cow-calf or sod?
We'll ask the owner to reply. I'm not aware of that. I'd have to check with we lease both those operations out to third parties, so I'm not aware of it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. No further discussion, entertain a motion? No.
I move we make this property Empire Grove eligible.
I second.
Roll call vote.
Mary Ann Connors,
Yes.
Steve Crump,
No.
Gerald Fieser,
Yes.
John Gamble,
No.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
No.
Suzanne Schreiber,
No.
Wanda Van Dam.
Yes.
Sorry, I can't see. It's motion
It received
passes.
5.
Okay. Okay, this will take some work. Thank you.
So the next application for your consideration is B&H Wildlife. This is submitted as a fee simple acquisition. Staff scored it an 8. 60 acres in size. It is not within a target area and is not adjacent to any conservation property.
Okay, if I understand this, it's a borrow pit coming to the end of its permit.
It's a fair description.
Okay. Anyone here representing a position? Ma'am? Are you Miss Anderson?
I'm not representing the project. I'm representing myself.
Yourself. I see
Yes.
that.
I'm Dr. Wendy Anderson. I am a professor at Stetson in environmental science. I'm also the chair of the Volusia Soil and Water Conservation District. I am not speaking on behalf of any of those organizations today. I only mention those as part of my qualifications. This project really gives me heartburn. I don't normally come to Volusia Forever Advisory Committee. I think most of the projects you all are reviewing are, you know, really, really worthy of preservation. What we're hearing today are some projects that are kind of in this fuzzy area. You know, the one we just talked about in Lake Helen, the one, you know, a little bit earlier, like, are we really going to start picking up land that is in various stages of degradation from its original natural state? I don't think this one is in the fuzzy area. I think this one is on the far end of the extreme of degradation. This is a hole in the ground. There is nothing in its current condition that is worth preserving. Okay, you are being asked to purchase a piece of land so it can be restored from a blank slate. It is the mining company's requirement by federal law and state law to fund the reclamation, to fund the restoration of this site. It is not Volusia taxpayers' responsibility to fund this. And as much as I would love to see Orange City have this site become a restored wetland, I would love to see that happen. And I apologize profusely to the city manager and the city commission of Orange City for standing here and opposing this project. This project gives me heartburn on many, many levels. First of all, it's not our job to buy it and fix it for a corporate entity. I think if you do this one, you're opening up a floodgate of potential projects across the county in areas like this, that everybody's going to come knocking on your door saying, I have this piece of property that's just, you know, totally degraded and I want you all to buy it and fix it for me. We can't open that floodgate. Second of all, or maybe third, I just want to point out the thing about this project that horrifies me. And I've been watching this for 4 or 5 years since it was first presented as a consortium among the West Volusia water authorities, where the cities of West Volusia and the county, you know, wanted to do this thing where they were going to pump a bunch of reclaimed water and stormwater into this pit to increase the minimum flows and levels of Blue Spring, which is part of the BMAP for Blue Spring. And, you know, big engineering study's been done on it, the Jones Edmonds study. And, you know, and they assure us that not a single molecule of nitrate or phosphate will get from this polluted water into Blue Spring, our first magnitude spring, or right next door, just a few hundred feet away. They promise us that the filters and the plants that they're putting into this recharge wetland are going to do their job. But other environmental scientists and geologists I've talked to, and we didn't do the study, and, you know, and I'm sorry to question the engineers' confidence on this, but we think if there's even a 1% risk or a 1/10% risk that any of these pollutants could migrate next door, just a few hundred feet, and pollute Blue Spring. That is a risk we are not willing to support. It just can't happen. If we want to recharge, extra stormwater and reclaimed water from these west side cities, we need to put it higher in the landscape, find a borrow pit uphill somewhere, but not next door to Blue Spring. The risk is too great. Blue Spring, if it gets these nutrients, will turn into Gemini Spring, which is now closed to swimming. Blue Spring is a huge part of the economic base of West Volusia. Ecotourism is a big part of our base. And if we screw up Blue Spring with this project, that's a lot of economic dollars we're going to lose in West Volusia. This is a risk we cannot bear. We can't do this project. B&H needs to clean up their own mess. And certainly Volusia taxpayers should not be buying this and taking care of this problem. So thank you.
Thank you for coming. Questions?
Madam Chair, can I just also point out that the city of Orange City did want to attend today and speak on behalf of the property, but the city manager had a conflict, couldn't make it.
Well, I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
A question, is it an active rail line right behind the property? Do we know that it is? Okay.
Mhm.
Yes, that is an active railroad.
Yeah, this one, I have some familiarity with the utility plans and interests. And that may still exist in the future. It may have a good public purpose at some point as something else, but I don't see how it fits into this program. We're not preserving or enhancing or creating a better something. I think it may have a public purpose, but this isn't the program where it fits logically, and that would be my perspective. Any other questions, comments?
So I would concur with that, but like the other property that we just spoke about, this doesn't meet our criteria either that we as a group set forth. So I would end it right there.
I understand. Any other comments, questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this as eligible.
And I'll second that, noting that that's how we always do it.
Okay.
Mary Ann Connors,
No.
Steve Crump,
No.
Gerald Beezer,
No.
John Gamble,
No.
Jessica Gao, Derek LaMontagne,
No.
Derek Orberg,
No.
Suzanne Schreiber,
No.
Wanda Van Dam.
No.
By the vote, this property is ineligible.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, next up for consideration is the Picket and Cooper property. It's a fee simple acquisition, about 40 acres. It is adjacent to the Wiregrass Prairie Preserve down in the Osteen area, and it is in the Volusia Conservation Corridor.
I also want to supplement that by pointing out that property to the west of this application piece is the Lucas Nursery application that you saw previously.
Which, and I'll build on that, is, so Lucas Nursery, because it is in the Volusia Conservation Corridor, is at Florida Forever in the triage process. So if we were to continue with the purchase of Lucas Nursery, this piece would become an in-holding that we would go after in terms of Wiregrass Prairie Preserve.
So you're suggesting that this is part of a larger process for acquisition of this area. As a standalone, it may or may not, is that what I'm understanding? But as part of a larger acquisition, this is the logical piece of that.
We feel very comfortable that we can roll this into the conversation with the state. Part of a partnership.
If I could, just to comment, I've walked out there several times looking at this, and it seems very logical, given the fact that the nursery portion is up for consideration and the fact that it is right next to the Wiregrass Prairie Preserve. It seems like it would fold into that very well.
Mary Ann? I move to make the Picket and Cooper property eligible.
Okay, motion and
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mary Ann Connors.
Yes.
Steve Crump,
Yes.
Gerald Fieser,
Yes.
John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek Lamontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam. By the vote, the property is eligible.
Thank you.
Next project for consideration is the Atlantic Center for the Arts. This is a 30-acre portion of that property. The application is a fee simple application. Staff scored it out of 10. It's within the target area, the Doris Leeper Spruce Creek Preserve, and the adjacent conservation property is the Spruce Creek Preserve. I did get an email from the Atlantic Center for the Arts. They've hired Biological Consulting Services Incorporated to assess the property. And they, while staff had this at the ineligible threshold, we had some unknowns in that scoring. And so we have some more supplemental information that Joe Young has supplied. Question 13, which was, does the property contain high functioning or potentially high functioning wetland ecosystems? His reply was, a larger area of wetlands on the Atlantic Center for the Arts property would be considered moderately functioning ditched pine flatwood wetlands. The high water table contributes to hydrological success, and the wetland plants within the systems are comparable to natural wet pine flatwoods with a similar hydrology without ditching. He also had comments on question number 18. This question reads, is there limited less than 5% ocular view Florida Exotic Pest Council Category 1 invasive exotic plant coverage observed? His reply was, during our review of the Atlantic Center for the Arts property, limited Florida Exotic Pest Council Category 1 invasive exotic plant coverage was observed. Brazilian pepper was the most common invasive species observed, and it was limited to the spoil mounds and ditch banks in the wet pine flatwoods. And his final comment dealt with question number 19. Question number 19 is the percentage of uplands, water bodies, or wetlands requiring restoration minimal? And his response was, the areas on site that could be restored represent less than 5% of the total site and are limited to historic ditches and spoil mounds. That was the extent of the comment submitted.
And Madam Chair, if I may add as well, just for the committee's information, that this property was in the previous iteration of Volusia Forever on our A list as well. So we have in the Doris Leeper Spruce Creek Preserve target area or project area about 300 acres that have not been acquired. So this would be about 10% of what's left in that optimum boundary that's not been acquired.
Okay. I will say that the property does seem to enjoy some protection currently under its PUD. But PUDs can change. Times change, PUDs can change. And so I think it, to preserve what it is and make it part of the preserve is an important function. Any questions, comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we deem the Atlantic Center for the Arts property eligible.
Second.
Motion and second. If no further discussion, roll call vote.
Marianne Connors.
Yes.
Steve Crump,
Yes.
Gerald Feaser,
Yes.
John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek Lamontagne,
Yes.
Derek Warburg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam. By the vote, the property is eligible.
Thank you. Number 8.
Next up for consideration is the DeHonda Investments property. It's a fee simple application of almost 24 acres. It's not adjacent to any conservation property and also not in an acquisition target area. Staff score was 4.
Let me also note that this was one of the nominations that we saw in the first cycle that was returned with a willing seller letter.
Any questions? Derek?
Yeah, we just get to it real quick.
I have a question. Did staff visit this property out of curiosity?
Not,
Did staff visit any of the properties today that were here?
we visited the Empire Groves property. So staff, during the eligibility phase, if there is a property that's scored under the minimum threshold, but because of the unknowns, the unknown questions, we will do a site visit to try to ground truth those questions. But otherwise, we are not visiting properties in the eligibility stage.
I wish I had asked that question on the Groves property. Too late.
So, I mean, I do appreciate that this appears to be undisturbed land. It looks like a forest, especially when it is surrounded by development. I do like preserving such places as habitat for the creatures that are otherwise displaced and will be displaced if, a place like this is eventually developed. And it is, a significant little chunk. It's not just like, the smallest property we got. It is, I believe, 23 something acres. So that's enough to have some species reside there. And it's very accessible too, if there's anything we have to do to watch it. So, I mean, it seems like a nice little intact habitat that is, otherwise perhaps going to be built on and doesn't seem that hard to manage. So I'd at least like to see it continue to the next stage, especially since, again, a couple of the other properties we did see appeared to be disturbed in some respect. So this one not being disturbed, I'd like to keep it that way if we can, and maybe see if we can get some partnership or something with the locals. You never know until you at least find it eligible. So that's my 2 cents. And I'm not going to get into like the points on which ones are unknown and stuff, but just at the overhead map at least, and where it is, it does seem it could have scored higher. So that's my opinion.
I have another couple of questions. What's going on with the surrounding lands with this? And was this the exact same submission the first time?
I may need some more clarity on what do you mean by what's going on with the surrounding properties?
The surrounding properties, are they, how are they zoned? And was this the same submission the first time? Was it exactly this submission the first time when you said it was submitted?
So zoning is in your map package that was supplied to the committee. Looks like this property is a combination of Greenway Commercial District and single-family low-density residential. What was this? So the question is this the same application that was submitted previously? The nomination?
It's the same land that was submitted the first time, because I don't know, I didn't see it. So I'm asking, is this the same exact submission? Because I think you said it was submitted, correct?
It was nominated in the first cycle and we did receive a.
Nominated,
Yeah, we
okay.
did receive a willing seller return. Actually, the owner actually filled out the entire application when they were filling out the willing seller. So just for clarification, when we receive a nomination from a citizen. We have a category of applications, just designated nominations. And so our first step is to log it in, and then we'll prepare a communication to the landowner. It's a letter that we send out, and we attach either a full application or a willing seller statement from them, depending on each nomination is a little bit different. But that's the course of events. If we receive that willing seller or that full application back, the property's entered into the next cycle.
And so to answer your question, Ms. Schreiber, yes, this was, these parcels were submitted as part of a larger packet from citizens from Lake Helen. And what they've submitted is this whole block. So if you see Church Street there on the west down to Pennsylvania up, this is a commercial zone for commercial development. And then obviously they don't want to see it developed commercially. So they have nominated every single parcel in this block. We've only heard back from these landowners in that block.
Derek?
Oh, sorry, just to follow up, because it was a question I had kind of earlier about getting the willing seller after a nomination from a citizen. Because again, I had that confusion earlier. Is it possible, I guess then, so if someone from the citizenry nominates a parcel, you can, if you hear back right away, then you include it in that cycle, essentially, right? I mean, if you hear the willing seller, you write them a letter, you say, are you a willing seller? If they write back, you say yes, then we'll see it. But I'm just kind of, I guess I would like to ask if maybe in the future you could clarify when you send that letter to those people, if you could give them a deadline. And again, I'm kind of asking from my experience that, you apparently got a willing seller response back from this other property on Spruce Creek Road, which again, I nominated, but it was on like June 7th. And so it was, 15 days before here. But if you told them, hey, if you respond before June 1st, it could have been on today's meeting. So if you give them a deadline, that would help, I think, perhaps.
We've actually had this same conversation this morning. We're going to have to put some deadlines in these letters if people intend to make the current cycle, yes.
And if I may add, Mr. LaMontagne, for folks, and I think this is for citizens who are nominating properties, it seems we get an avalanche on the last day of nominations. So when we come in that morning and there's 30 nominations in our mailbox, it slows the process down. So if they can get them to us early in the nomination or in the cycle, that would certainly help the staff move forward on them.
Mary Ann, quick comment. As a small acreage property, for me to even consider it, it has to be unbelievably outstanding. I don't see, there's nothing here outstanding.
Well, and I'm looking, since Suzanne raised it, I'm just looking at the zoning map. I mean, this is right near an interchange. It is zoned for a higher level of activity. The blue for reference is single family, but it's really intended to reflect the larger geography in terms of being a commercial district. So
Has the city manager commented on this, since you've seen him on other things?
No comments from the city manager.
I mean, if that's their gateway, I would think that they'd want to develop it that way. But yeah, I don't see.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say, regardless of the vote, if you do come back or if they come back next cycle with those other chunks, then I mean, that we should definitely consider that. I mean, I had mentioned before, I do like this and willing to vote it eligible, but of course, if it doesn't succeed, please come back whoever the owners are. Thanks.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this property into the program.
Second. Motion and second, roll call vote.
Mary Ann Connors,
No?
Steve Crump,
No.
Gerald Fieser,
No.
John Gamble,
No.
Jessica Gao,
No.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
No.
Suzanne Schreiber,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam. By vote, the property is not eligible.
Okay.
Number 9 is Hibiscus Lane, fee simple application. Staff scored this as a 7. It's 9.5 acres in size. It's not within an acquisition target area. It's not within an adjacent, there is no adjacent conservation property.
Any discussion, questions?
I have a
Derek?
quick comment. So I know you say it's not adjacent, but I mean, if we kind of consider the straight across going south of the water at Lake Bethel, that shoreline is conservation. And then it does appear that, you know, kind of that little cove has several conservation areas. I mean, again, because it's not land contiguous, it's not, but, you know, water is in between it. But I don't know, I guess I would kind of say like the fact that it is in an area where shorelines are kind of conservation, it's hard to like be contiguous in that sense. But I do think it should have maybe scored on that one. And again, it seems like depending on the purchase price and so forth, it is pristine. It is helpful for water resilience. It's near these other conservation areas along the shoreline. Again, I guess suppose wish, not just wish, but I mean, think it should have scored higher on some of those connectivity or water scorecards. So that's why I do think it should at least move past this step. Maybe, you know, again, if it's on B property later, that's fine, but we don't know until we move it forward. No, that's my opinion. Thanks.
Just a comment. Looking at the floodplain map, it looks like all but maybe an acre and a half maybe is within the 100-year floodplain. And so just from a practical standpoint, to develop anything on the site, you'd have to have compensatory storage within the basin. I don't think that it's practical for the site to be developed. And part of it is already in a conservation easement, so.
Which seems to be what the owner is indicating, is that it has not been marketable. I think it seems to be preserved by what it is. So. Comment, discussion? Roll call vote? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we deem the Hibiscus Lane parcels eligible.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Roll call vote, please.
Mary Ann Connors,
No?
Steve Crump,
No.
Gerald Vieser,
No.
John Gamble,
No.
Jessica Gao,
No.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
No.
Suzanne Schreiber, Wanda Van Dam.
No.
By the vote, the property is ineligible.
Okay. Item 10.
All right, next up for consideration is a fee simple acquisition of 0.45 acres in the northeast corner of the county. It's not in an acquisition target area. It's not adjacent to any conservation property. Staff score was a 7. And as you can see from the photo, this is right on the beach.
Any comments, discussion, questions? Derek?
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I was going to speak, but I would just like to point out that I'm not criticizing our criteria or anything, but I do think they're not really designed for, you know, maybe beachfront property, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't like definitely include that as an important, statement piece of what it means to be in Volusia County. I mean, the beach is important, and I highly doubt we'll get any other beachfront property. And again, just because it's not a corridor, of course you can't have a corridor because where's it going to go, into the ocean? I mean, so those, not scoring on that does not, I don't think, take away at all from a possibility to get a property on the beach. Again, it all depends on, what kind of price it is later, but I'm super happy that they nominated this. And again, we have, sea turtles and beach creatures that need protection. And I highly doubt, maybe unlike the other parcel, that, leaving this one alone won't end up being developed at someday. So, I mean, if we get a chance to protect it now, I think we should try. And again, we're not even at that step. We're still like, 2 or 3 steps away, just moving it forward doesn't do any harm, but, it's ultimately up to the county and our wonderful staff about if, we can get partners. But I mean, a beachfront property is, they don't make those much anymore. So I do like it for those reasons. And again, think that maybe the scores aren't reflective of what that actually is. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Yeah.
Sir.
I just said, as properties get smaller, they must be more outstanding for me to even consider them. This one I would consider. This is super special. I would like to hear from other folks from the other side of the county what their thoughts are. I'm open.
Well, I'll comment. I think, I see this, again, it's probably protected by what it is. I don't think it has a likely prospect for development. I don't know that it offers any larger public purpose other than, the other miles and miles of beachfront. So I don't know that it contributes anything exceptional or unique in terms of the environment, or offers a greater protection from development other than what already exists by what it is. Jessica?
A question, do we know how deep the parcel is? I know that's a weird question. It's got a lot of frontage, but I don't know how deep it is. I agree with Marianne in that I think it's protected by a number of factors. The zoning, I acknowledge zoning can change, but most zoning that would allow homes on that lot would require at least 100-foot depth, which is why I ask. And it's also within the floodplain, and it's probably past the coastal construction line. I think that runs along A1A here. And so, yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, and I'll add that the county's been very careful and have bought a lot of property for parking and other things. And if there's other money to be spent, if this had purpose in that area, I doubt that it does. But I'm along with Marianne. This is very much like the salt marsh properties we saw. They have a lot of value, but there's no point in buying them because they're not developable. So don't spend the time and the money doing it because it won't change anything, us buying it over somebody else owning it. So we lose the tax dollars when that happens. So let somebody pay the taxes on it and we'll all smile and be happy. So thank you.
Derek?
I do want to point out there is a benefit from buying it, and that is that someone kind of, well, I guess us and the public are perhaps able to restore it or, maintain, if there's sea dunes or anything that needs to be, kept healthy, we can at least monitor that, and it's not just going to, be covered in trash or tourists walking over it. And I mean, there's reasons to acquire it. And I also haven't seen evidence that says that this, can't be developed. I've not seen a parcel in the entire county that can't be developed personally. I mean, because I've seen so many times when you can, you can change zoning, obviously, but you can also, offset it and dig it and dredge it. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's immediately a threat here, but, if people 100 years from now figure out the technology to do that and they wondered why we didn't acquire this, or at least consider acquiring it now, I mean, we're benefiting those people. I mean, it's not the people just even today or even like, a year from now, but like, this is, we're talking about perpetuity. And I mean, if in 100 years, this is developable some way, I think we would have, they'd wonder why we couldn't maybe have saved it. And, the turtles, of course, that might nest there appreciate it, I'm sure. But again, that's just my opinion, and I haven't seen anything that it's not worth it to me. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to make this property eligible.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mary Ann Connors,
No.
Steve Crump,
No.
Gerald Fieser,
No.
John Gamble,
No.
Jessica Gao,
No.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
No.
Suzanne Schreiber,
No.
Wanda Van Dam.
No.
By the vote, the property is ineligible.
The final application that we have for consideration this morning is the Warsham Parcel. They've submitted this as either a fee simple or a conservation easement. Staff scored it as a 3. Acreage is under a half acre, 0.39. It is not within an acquisition target area. There is no adjacent conservation property.
Discussion.
This is too small.
I make a motion that we accept this.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Derek?
So is the motion for either fee simple or conservation easement, I suppose, just to clarify? Because perhaps we could just approve it as one, is that correct, hypothetically, or any property for that matter? Maybe that's a question for staff, I suppose.
So we might need some clarification here. Normally, we have some direction from the applicant on what they want to see this property be. The other guiding factor is the score itself. So the threshold for a conservation easement is 5, and this scored a 3. So if this is determined to be eligible from the committee, we do need some clarification on whether it's fee simple or conservation easement.
For clarity, would you like us to take 2 votes?
We did that previously with the Wisniewski property, so it may be beneficial to keep with the same practice.
Okay, can we ask the motion maker to
I made the
clarify?
motion for just fee simple only.
And the second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote?
Mary Ann Connors,
No?
Steve Crump,
No.
Gerald Fieser,
No.
John Gamble,
No.
Jessica Gao,
No.
Derek LaMontagne,
No.
Derek Orberg,
No.
Suzanne Schreiber,
No.
Wanda Van Dam.
No.
By the vote, the property is ineligible.
Okay. Second vote. Is there a motion to approve the property for and conservation easement?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve the property for conservation easement.
I'll second that.
Motion is second. Roll call vote, please.
Mary Ann Connors,
No?
Steve Crump,
No.
Gerald Fieser,
No.
John Gamble,
No.
Jessica Gao,
No.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
No.
Suzanne Schreiber,
No.
Wanda Van Dam. By vote, the property is ineligible.
Thank you. Brad, take us through item 8 here.
All right, so item 8, we're required by our enabling resolution to have a work plan each year. And so what we're suggesting is we continue to do the good work that we've done in terms of our work plan for 2022. We have, by that enabling resolution, we do 2 of these eligibility sessions. We also do sorting and, of course, support that acquisition of land. So this is what we're proposing that we forward to council, presenting for any feedback that you may have for staff consideration.
As part of goal setting, is that an appropriate time for us to revisit some of the criteria that have been used? Like I mentioned in the last meeting, I mean, we've been through a couple of cycles now. I think it might be just a useful exercise to look at whether or not the criteria are functioning as we intended in terms of revealing the best properties, and are we capturing the things that we wanted to capture? And I have no further vision of what that would be. I just thought that it's a couple of cycles under our belt might have indicated to some. I know I see criteria that don't seem to clarify things for me, and so I'm just looking for whether we can revisit them.
And we'd be interested in what the staff's having issues with on the criteria. So that we're all working on the, to smooth things out, so.
And I would agree.
And you saw me shaking my head. Staff would certainly appreciate that opportunity. We have a list to discuss with you. And I think it would behoove us to, as we bring this to council, to include it maybe as number 5 so that they know that we're going to do that. At this point in time, I think December 7th is our next meeting. We'll have had 3 cycles because of our October through November cycle under our belt. And that's when we would propose to do it in 2022. So it would be part of this. So if there's a motion to that effect, we would certainly add it.
I'll make a motion that we hold a workshop to discuss our eligibility criteria.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like? Thank you.
Great. Next slide, please. As part of our enabling resolution, we're also required to give an annual report to the council. So we're catching up from 2021. And so this is the annual report that we're proposing to provide to the council. So as you know, in 2021, you all were appointed. We went through orientation. We conducted those listening sessions all over the county. We evaluated the criteria and we held that joint workshop with county council, of course. Are there any additions or edits? We'll certainly entertain those. Otherwise, this is what will be presented.
Okay.
And certainly in 2022, we'll have much more to report in terms of staff accomplishments as well as the dashboard, which I think we're very proud of.
Is there anything that I don't know, kind of captures how many, at least applications were processed and things like that? Just sort of a background of what was processed, if not achieved as yet, but things that are, it's indicative, I think, of the workload that staff has taken on in this program. I would just like to capture some of that information for the council's benefit.
If there's no objections by the committee, I think that's a valid suggestion to contextualize this by including some data, especially that we received the most applications ever when we first opened the cycle and processed them. So we'll include that.
Any other discussion?
Okay. Next slide for me, Sarah. So we've had a few questions in terms of, we've had a few requests from committee members to reschedule. our August 24th meeting. And I realize that's been on everyone's calendar, so we're just having kind of an open discussion to see if there is another date that will work. August 24th is our meeting at this point in time. But some other dates that the chamber is available, as well as your staff is available, are on the screen.
Are those the only dates? I mean, I was the one that had a problem with the 24th. I can't make a single one of those. I got a whole list of other ones, but you just happened to just peg my vacation, so. Or actually not when I'm out of town.
Yes.
I have jury duty on August the 15th.
Okay.
I didn't raise my hand for it.
That's right.
The first week in August isn't available, like the 3rd, 4th, 5th,
Sarah,
even the 8th.
I'll look over to my team. They have the calendar. Someone has the calendar over there. What does the chambers look like on the first week of August? Monday date, Monday the 1st.
The 3rd, it's available. The 4th, it is available. And the 5th, it is available.
So 1, 3, 4, 5?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So does anyone have an issue with August 1st? Let's go like this.
I can only do the 5th, if that makes sense.
Okay. Is anyone else not available on the 5th?
What day of the week is that?
Friday,
It's okay.
August 5th. August 5th works.
Okay.
Sweet, thank you, everybody, I appreciate that.
Thank you for me too. I'm also one that requested a date change, and I'll thank you for that too.
Okay, next slide. So one of the things that just wanted to, and I want to thank Member Van Dam for asking the question about the wildlife corridor, Florida Wildlife Corridor at our last meeting. And so I thought it would be helpful to just provide some updates on where we are, what it is, and kind of what our next steps are. You know, as you probably may know, I gave a presentation to council earlier this year, and there was some feedback that we need to do a better job of educating the public about the importance of the wildlife corridor. So I'm going to contextualize it for you, but also then provide you with some information where we plan to have a public conference to educate our citizens about the corridor. So first, the Florida Wildlife Corridor. You know, we always say forever was blessed that 75% of our citizens agreed on something. Well, the legislature agreed 100% on the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act. So unanimous support in both the House and Senate, and signed into law by the governor. But essentially what it does is recognizes a geographic area in the state of Florida, 18 million acres, for which 10 million has been conserved at this point. Within the corridor, there's different priority areas. What informs the designation of the corridor is research from UF called the Ecological Greenways Network, as you can see there. There's different priority areas within the Ecological Greenway Network and the Wildlife Corridor. I'm proud to say, thanks to the gentleman sitting behind me in yellow, we used this Ecological Greenways Network research in the early 2000s to designate the Volusia Conservation Corridor. We've been using this research to designate our project areas that we take to Florida forever. However, there's been 300 million dedicated to this wildlife corridor in ARPA funds. So we have till 2026 essentially to get these funds encumbered. Our conversations with staff at Florida Forever is whether to use this money, the 300 million from ARPA, or their state appropriation that they use from Florida Forever, which last year was 100 million and proposed again this year at 100 million. Whether they use this 300 million or their state appropriation is a staff level decision. So some of the things that we have at Triage right now may be funded by wildlife corridor funds, ARPA funds, or it may be funded by the Florida Forever state appropriation. So that's really their decision to make. It does not establish a new program, application, or process. They're using the Florida Forever process to disseminate these funds. Next slide, please. I think, why is the wildlife corridor important? I think the same reasons that our voters said that Volusia Forever was important. To prevent habitat fragmentation, protect water quality and quantity, maintain access of genetic diversity for migration of animals, as well as protecting the ecological function and integrity of these large pieces. And that's what we've, in our conversations with Florida Forever staff, they're really looking at those larger pieces that will make an ecological difference in terms of the services that they offer to our citizens. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, EGN, Ecological Greenways Network, again, that's the research or the areas that they're using to define the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So these two colors, that is the Florida Wildlife Corridor in our county. So we have a 434,000 acres that has been designated as the wildlife corridor. And we have conserved, not only with us, but with our partners, 400, or I'm sorry, next slide. I'm getting ahead of myself. So
Brad, let me interrupt you real quick.
Yes, sir.
Priority 1, that's the top priority.
Correct.
And 3 is the lowest priority.
Correct.
Thank you.
So priority 1 are those critical linkages. So they're, which are very high or high ecological significance, but also have areas that are, have some basically critical areas threatened by development. That's essentially what they're saying, is that these areas are the ones, these are the high, if you look in our county, those are the high and dry areas that are probably where developers would want to be. And so what we've done, priority 2 are the ones that are, they're critical, but they're more critical to making the connections between the different corridors. So as you can see here, not only through our efforts, but through our federal, state, and regional partners, we've conserved about 55% of the corridor to date, which includes Canaveral National Seashore, as you will see there, as well as some conservation easements and fee simple purchases, our state forest there, that runs through the center of the county there. I'm happy to say that, you know, and I'm a pretty competitive person, and I shared this with the council, that we're about 5,000 acres behind Hillsborough County and what they have conserved through their county government, and we will pass them as long as I'm in this seat, hopefully. But one of the things I think that's important for the public to know, and you as the Volusia Forever Committee to know, is that right now, in order to access this funding, just being in the wildlife corridor is not enough. You have to meet 2 criteria. You've got to be in a Florida Forever project area and in the wildlife corridor. So you have to meet those 2 criteria in order to access that $300 million in funding. And so we're in a unique position that we have the Volusia Conservation Corridor, which is 50,000 acres, of which we've conserved 40,000. So we, in this cycle, have taken a precision kind of targeted approach in reaching out to those landowners, because those are the ones we know that we can take to triage. There's a quicker pathway to acquisition with those properties, in addition to adding some new projects as well. So that's where we are when Tim gave you that update, when he talked about the new application as one pathway, the triage process is another pathway. That's a quicker process. Typically, when you are submitting a new application, just the project to get through the evaluation phase and presented as part of Acquisition and Restoration Council's work plan takes about 2 years. So what we're submitting now as a new application before it's even considered for acquisition will take about 18 months, 18 to 24 months to go through that evaluation process. So our team is using both pathways to access this money. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing is a Florida Wildlife Corridor Volusia County Conference. And so please put this date on your calendar. It's a Saturday, August 13th. 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Daytona Beach is the tentative plan for now. We should have we're working on the logistics as we speak, and hopefully we'll have a press release out within, I'm not good at giving timelines. As soon as possible, we will have a press release out. And the target audience here is going to be the general public, landowners, especially those folks where we're precision targeting, and also realtors and our partners. And what are the objectives? And the educator in me comes out if we're going to have a meeting. What do we want to accomplish? And number one is we want people to understand the benefits of habitat connectivity provided by corridors. So that ecological function, why it's important that we conserve corridors rather than isolated pieces. I think in the context of Volusia Forever, we need to do some isolated, highly visible pieces to our community as well. But really, if we're talking about ecological significance in terms of groundwater recharge, that connectivity is important. So that's what we've asked. That's what we've accomplished, what we want to accomplish, as well as explain the economic and quality life benefits of land conservation. We have a speaker who can make the business case for conservation. There was recently a study done by McKinsey & Company that shows that the corridor provides for 114,000 jobs and 30 billion in economic impact each year to our state. And so he's really going to make that case to the business community that this is why conservation is important. Then we'll have Volusia Forever staff, of course, kind of share what I've shared with you today. Here's where here's what we've accomplished in the past. Here's our pathway forward to let people know that we're engaged with our partners. They respect our roles and we respect their roles, and we have a strong partnership. And then, of course, we have some outstanding citizens who've done work on developing a website and Facebook page for the Wildlife Corridor here in Volusia County. I want to give them an opportunity to share those resources with our public as well. So that's kind of a snapshot of what's to come in August 13th. One other thing I wanted to share with you as well is just so you are in the know, the legislature and the governor signed it, has allocated another $300 million in ARPA funds to another land acquisition program in our state. So we have two land acquisition programs. One is Florida Forever, and one is the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program, which is run through the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So they have essentially given, again, $300 million becomes available on January 2023 to the Department of Ag to do agricultural easement, both ag easement and some fee simple acquisitions. And so I wanted to let you know that our team is engaged. We've spoken with the Department of Ag. We've given them our ag easement applications to this point in time. Tim and I are headed over to Tallahassee next month to meet with their team. And so they know that we were really ahead of the 8 ball on this in terms of including farms and farm forests and farmlands in our ballot language and having a separate program. So now we'll have a path to fund some of those easements outside of the Forever program. So that's what the team is working on, and we'll continue to keep you updated as we learn more. It seems that they're going to keep their program very similar to what it is now, which is good for us because remember when we established the forest and farmlands criteria, we aligned with their program. And so we're hoping that we can just move things through the process. I've learned it's never that easy, but having that, Tim has developed a good relationship with the team there, but having that sit down meeting, I think will go a long way for us. So just some updates from the staff I wanted to give you, and stay tuned for more information. You guys will be the first to hear it as we, the plans for the wildlife corridor, the Florida Wildlife Corridor Conference in Volusia County comes to fruition. Thank you.
Hey, Brad.
Yes, sir.
There's a speaker, his name is Paul Stamets.
Okay.
He makes the case for forests being a national interest as far as like security and things like that, due to the health benefits in which we receive from our forests.
Okay.
He's a good speaker. I obviously don't know if he would be available, but he could be a keynote speaker.
Okay, can you share it? So we have a keynote, but we could
Okay,
certainly reach out
Yeah.
if you could share his information with me.
Yeah.
Thank you
You got it.
for the input. Any other comments, questions?
Brad,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say something. So at the Wildlife Corridor Summit that happened in Orlando in April, there were 5 people that went from our county, and our 2 staff people were the bomb. Our county chair also went. He was one of the only elected officials, if not the only one there, and he was definitely the only county chair there in the state, and there were people there from all over the state. I attended and represented my own organization as well as Libby Levette from our county, so we kind of had a delegation, and it was really awesome because there were classes that you went out and took, and there were 3 going on at the same time. And I believe that we all kind of chose different things which worked to our advantage. And along with the foundation, which is spending a lot of time in Tallahassee, there is a Live Wildly campaign, which they launched for marketing the wildlife corridor to get people active going out and utilizing the corridor, swimming in the springs, hiking, biking, all those things in the corridor. And it's geared towards everyone, but it seems like they're really utilizing young people in their marketing, which is kind of exciting. So anyway, I just want to say kudos to those that attended. County staff, you guys were great. Our county chair was great. It was all Volusia County is really ahead of the curve, and we're viewed as leaders in this area. And I'm glad that you're a little competitive there when you were talking about that. So it's all good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That's it. The next item is the election of chair and vice chair. For the coming cycle, we'll entertain motions.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Mary Ann Connors.
I'll second.
Hey, Madam Chair, this is Russ Brown. May I make a comment before we start?
Please.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to make sure that for the nomination process, we actually don't need a second, although I appreciate that, Ms. Van Dam. It's once you open up the floor, it's open to any nominations. Anybody can make a nomination. Then once you close it, and as long as nobody objects to that closing, then you just take a vote in the order by which they were nominated, and then the majority vote of the first person is who becomes the next chair and vice chair. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page for the process.
Okay, so Russ, am I accepting any other nominations that may?
So at this time, what I heard is Mr. Gamble nominated Ms. Van Dam as chair. Is that correct?
No,
No.
Mary Ann Connors.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me, Madam Chair. This is sickness has got my ears clogged. So Mr. Gamble nominated Ms. Connors as the current chair. So that's fine. And then the floor is still open for other nominations.
So any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Roll call vote?
Mary Ann Connors,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam,
Yes.
Steve Crump,
Yes.
Gerald Feather,
Yes.
John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Derek Lamontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Russ, do we still have you?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
I would just like, for the information of the committee members, our terms, I believe, end next year, and it will be after an election. Is that correct? Do I have both? I know it's after an election, but am I correct that our terms end with that time, at that time, and then everybody will be subject? There will be new people to make new appointments. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, if I remember correctly, and I don't have the resolution in front of me, but I believe it's a 2-year term. And based on where it falls, it will be after the next election cycle.
Okay, so that's just for general information. I believe it was, we were structured to be able to do that. It's not unique to this advisory group. It's others as well. Brad?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, that's correct. And when the new council members come on, you all serve at the pleasure of the council that appointed you. And so if they elect to, before your tenure runs, they could appoint somebody else to fill your seat, or just let your tenure run. And then if you reapply, reappoint you, however that may be. But that's generally how it works.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
I will just add as a point of clarification for the committee, it's in terms of transparency. So since you were elected as chair, this will be your last year. We only allow 2 terms for the chair to serve consecutively.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the support. Right at the point that I'm actually really getting better at this, I'm going to be stepping down, but thank you all for your support. And if you have any suggestions on how you would like to improve meetings, please share them. So, advisory committee comments.
Election of vice chair.
Oops, vice chair, I'm sorry. Nominations.
I will nominate Miss Van Dam.
No need for a second. Roll call vote.
Mary Ann Connors,
Yes.
Wanda Van Dam, Steve Crump,
Yes.
Gerald Feather,
Yes.
John Gamble,
Yes.
Jessica Gao, Derek Lamontagne,
Yes.
Derek Orberg,
Yes.
Suzanne Schreiber.
Yes.
9-0.
We will keep our present seats. Advisory committee comments.
Yeah, I have one question for staff. And I don't know if this is true, but I heard that St. John's was selling off some of their properties. And maybe if that's true, are there any in this county and are they significant? Or does anybody want to share any of that info with us? So.
Yes, so the district is trying to update their land acquisition plan, their 5-year land acquisition plan. That conversation started in January with their governing board. We were in support of that land acquisition plan because it identified some of our projects that we actually have in our cycles right now. And so Tim went and spoke and was in support of the land acquisition plan. So their plan to, and as part of that land acquisition plan discussion in January, the governing board also discussed developing a surplus list to be a component of the land acquisition plan. The Water Management District had a workshop in March that Tim also attended. They were not telling us the lands that would be listed on the surplus list at that time. So they were doing some internal analyses. Late last week, they released that surplus plan as a part of their agenda, which included 9 parcels in our county for a total of 3,000 acres. We had some real concerns about that, and we want to thank the Water Management District for, I think this is a testament to having good partnerships and good relationships. they listen to our concerns and the concerns of many others throughout the district. And so at this point in time the plan is, their chairman tweeted that it will not be considered. Their staff has told us it's dead. And we have reassurance from the executive director that stakeholder engagement will take place on the front end. Our staff will be involved in that process if it comes back before them. And so at this point in time, we're in a holding pattern. I know that the council authorized the county manager yesterday to send a letter to the water management district, thanking them for their partnership and listening to our concerns and willingness to engage with us going forward, because we are a valued partner of theirs, and as are they us. And so we just want to remind them that this is a partnership. And so I think they've gotten the message. And I think hopefully out of this, it will strengthen our partnership with them.
Good job. Kudos to staff again for another good job.
Okay. Any other comments? So
Could I ask, we had, this came up just very briefly in our last meeting, cattle leases on Volusia Forever properties. Could I ask at next meeting if we have an official position on that we know what it is? To me, it makes perfect sense if property is not going to be restored in a short time frame to use a cattle lease to gather income. But I don't know if there's people that feel differently about that, and I am curious if we have a position on that. But it can be discussed next time.
So I think that's a conversation that we need to have with our chain of command, but we will certainly broach the topic and bring back the information that we gather in that process.
Yeah, it raises a lot of interesting aspects in terms of uses and public purpose. And I mean, it's an interesting discussion.
Just to add one little thing to that, I was involved when they did the initial cattle lease on Deep Creek Preserve. And we included in that whoever was the successful bidder had to have the BMP program and all that. And I believe that cattleman that currently has that lease is the only cattle BMP program in the county. But what that did is allowed us to take that property out of the BMAP process because they were doing that. So, and of course, the cattle are great at maintaining. If you want pasture, unless you're going to burn it every couple of years, it's awfully hard to or mow it or do something else, but to remove the stuff. But there's an opportunity. We didn't want a crappy cattle lease. We wanted a really good one, and I think we got one. And I don't know how the partnership has gone since that was many years ago, but I assume that it's gone well since then. So, but that's an opportunity. So,
Derek?
So just some comments, and perhaps I'd like to request some information. Not sure if it requires a motion or not, but and I also want to just kind of discuss in the open here what we consider as properties on our list of, eligibility, because I think, we obviously we all have different opinions and we trust, the data and the scores. But in general, sometimes I just want to get people's thoughts on if there really is size limits to what properties, we do want to acquire, because there's a few small ones and we just said no. And I just don't quite understand if we're really, everyone feels that we shouldn't consider anything less than like 5 acres, because I don't feel that way. And again, maybe we're just, it's depends on the specific example, but I just want to know if you guys had kind of opinions that you'd be willing to share on moving forward. Maybe this will help people in the future with their nominations, be like, oh, they're not even going to consider anything less than, 10 acres or whatever. I like to encourage any nomination from a parcel that someone wants to save. If they nominated it, there's a reason. I mean, sometimes we can deduce whether it's like, oh, it's just a financial reason, like, hey, I can't, do anything with this. I'm just going to try to make some money. I don't think that's the majority of the nominations. I think the majority for sure, because people want to protect these areas and they only can do so much and they only know what's near them. And so if there's just like a, little 3-acre parcel behind, their local store that they say, hey, that's a nice place. I've seen owls there, whatever. Like that's, to me, I want to encourage that. But I do want to know like your opinion, if you think the size matters, but also like I'm trying to understand if the land use and the zoning has an effect too, because I know we've mentioned here kind of both ways that sometimes if it's unbuildable, it's like flooded or whatever, then it's like, we don't need to even do anything. But then I've heard the opposite where it's like, oh, it's prime for development. Like that's right next to a place where they're building all this other stuff. So we should allow it to be built. So I am confused myself and I want to get your opinion. So I said I want that. So please, if anyone wants to chime in on either of those, if you really think, the zoning should matter that much or if the size matters, I'd just like to get your thoughts.
Suzanne's ready to chime.
Yeah, I am ready to chime. So I guess we're going to be reviewing some of these things. And to add to what Derek said, I too am asking the same question. Is there a cutoff on the size of the land? Because as somebody who tried to get 36 acres purchased on the Ormond Scenic Loop, it was only 36 acres. And at the time, Echo ended up purchasing the land, but I was criticized heavily for how small the land was. So I'm somebody asking this question from a legitimate standpoint that already went through it and lived it. In addition, the size of the land relative to where it is, as you asked about the beach lot, I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. As far as zoning, I don't personally think that any of us should be making a decision as to what should be developed or not developed for a city. I know the statement was made today about the one in Lake Helen. I think it's up, it either meets the criteria or it doesn't. I don't think it's up to us to say, well, that should be developed or that shouldn't be developed or whatever. I don't know, but I guess we'll be discussing a lot of these things when the time comes during that meeting. If Brad wants to chime in here.
I would just say, I think December 7th is what we have scheduled right now to have this discussion based on the work plan that we just discussed.
I'd be happy to at least jump in. I don't think the size is defining, but I think it certainly matters. And it matters in terms of its impact. Because a small parcel maybe adjacent to something larger would have a different meaning than a small parcel that is isolated. I think it matters functionally in terms of how it goes. In terms of zoning and land use, those decisions are made by other bodies, and that's fine. That's their discretion, their prerogative. I just think we have to recognize that those are decisions that are out there, and they are not our prerogative, and that's fine. In general, I would say, Derek, that there are always going to be a lot of really good ideas. And I trust this process to be the one that percolates the best ideas, and that the money should go to the best uses, so that not everything that's available is worth pursuing. It doesn't mean it doesn't have some advantages. It just means we do the best we can with the resources we have. And I think we should not worry about finding good purposes to spend money. They will be there. They will be there and they will be good public purposes.
I just want to say Derek brought up a good
Mhm.
point, though. The comment has come up numerous times about something being small. So it's a legitimate question if we're going to define something or not. I think that's what he's asking. I'm asking the same question.
Well, let me share at least why I think small in a lot of cases is not good, especially in urban environments or where there's development all the way around. First of all, small for these guys to manage is almost impossible, but it means they got to go by, clean up the garbage. If there's homeless people in there, they got to get them out of there. It becomes a problem in a neighborhood when everybody, county owns that. So that's who they call when there's a problem with it. A lot of those small properties in urban areas are have feral cats in them, which, and the primary reason that the cats are there is because there's probably not enough coyotes to eat them in the area. But you don't see that in a big area because there's coyotes and bobcats that won't let the feral cat population go crazy. But anyways, you get this mix of kind of non-native wildlife, and then you want the birds and those things in there. And I'm a guy, I live on 8 acres, and we've got 2 house cats, and I'm glad that they are not good at hunting birds because I love the birds. I take tons of pictures of them and stuff like that. But I also have enough acreage that we see our birds producing young and everything like that. A small, less than an acre, less than a half acre. Some of those birds, those wild birds have to go out into the urban environment, and they're not that successful doing that because everybody's got cats and other things going on. So a lot of times in environmental small, now if there's a unique feature, like there's a massive oak tree or something like that, maybe, it's worth doing. But, these guys have to manage this stuff, and you get 16 million little pieces that they got to go around and take care of. And that's a lot of money. People don't understand what it takes to just go over and manage a property regularly, and
I just want to say it's relative as to what you consider small. So I just said that 36 acres were small to some people.
Yeah.
And an acre is small to someone else. So if we're going to define this, please define it.
Well, I think you got to go case by case like we've been doing. I mean, I don't think they're all the same. I think you could find, 36 acres, that's a gem that.
I'm glad to hear you say that. It's just the statement keeps being made. That's all.
Yeah. But I mean, there's more bang for your buck the bigger you go. Or if it's tied to something that you already own, it's like the wiregrass stuff. If you get that nursery and you get that chunk today, I don't know, that almost doubles the size of that property over there. So that's to me, and those, at least the nursery is kind of a crappy property. The only value I saw in it is that it's right next to what we got, which is if we can do it, then they're already there, they can take care of it. So. But that's my view. So.
Steve?
I talked a lot about the small size. It's a high hurdle for a small size property to meet the criteria. If it doesn't meet the criteria, I will look at it and assess it every time. And I don't want to put any limit on anyone to apply. But they have to meet the criteria we've already established. And if they don't meet the criteria, I don't look very far.
Makes
Is that
sense.
fair?
Yeah. Can I follow up? Just so we're having a discussion. I appreciate everyone's comments. So you had mentioned to like adding, a small piece next to a bigger piece, as opposed to adding a small piece isolated, like those seem to be, but your statement, and it seems like there's kind of a consensus that it's a lot easier to do that than to just have one by itself. But I mean, I look at it more of what's more valuable for the environment. I mean, if you have like 100 acres and you add like, 10 acres next to that, it's like, is that really going to like add a whole nother species that can live there? I mean, if they can live in 110, they can live in 100, most likely. But if you have another 10-acre parcel that's surrounded by development otherwise, that might be the only place that those species can live. And I know, there's a problem with cats and so forth, but there's, other life finds a way, to quote from that movie. But that's what I care most about, is having these pockets of giving populations and the biodiversity a chance to survive in an otherwise, soon to be built or already kind of built out area. So I know we have several goals, and it's right to have those goals of corridor and connectivity and water recharge. But I mean, to me, the most important thing and the biggest threat to, the planet is the loss of biodiversity. And I mean, we'll find ways to get drinking water if we have to desalinate the ocean. We'll find, as a species, as a county, I mean, I know it might be expensive, but, and other things too, well, tourism might suffer if our springs are polluted, but, we'll survive. But if a species goes extinct because during the migration, they can't find a little island to land on, or again, this, little insect that has nowhere else to breed, it just gets mowed over. I mean, we don't know what we're losing. And so that's why, to me, I know we have criteria. I'm not saying we need to not, consider that, but I value it more when a property is isolated for that reason, that it's an island of possibly the only place a species can live there, rather than, I know it's easier and more cost efficient perhaps to manage it that way. But that's why I would like maybe in the future to expand this to be, we are looking for more partners and giving those an opportunity. For instance, if we had a little parcel near some school and maybe the teachers or the students said, hey, we will clean up the trash. We don't want the county to come out and do that. But we just need you guys to acquire it for us. Give us a chance to, those, people from Lake Helen, and apparently there was, they wanted that saved. I feel like they would actively keep it clean, actively say that's our park, and give that feeling of respect and dignity to it that it deserves, and not just treat it as oh, county owns it. To me, when I see county owns on a sign, I'm wow, that's top of the top. I want us to be that premier brand, essentially. Volusia Forever owns this. Wow, don't throw your trash there. That's what I want us to be. So if they see that, it gives that respect. And I mean, and another thing I wanted to mention, again, I don't mean to just be on a soapbox here, I'm sorry, but this is our only chance to speak, in public, so I want to take that, is to, sometimes it takes multiple steps. So sure, it might just be a 4-acre parcel now, but maybe then, they didn't submit all the things at once, or they only have enough, partner funding from the city to just get this, but, the parcel next to it and next to it might, the next year be acquired. So these small ones could grow in some cases. And again, we don't know the future, but I think we've all kind of agreed that, and I appreciate that, that a small parcel doesn't mean it's not ruled out. But same with my other point on the land development, on the zoning, I want to touch back, because my particular request for information is, I guess, to the board, or to the committee, but also to the staff on what these protections mean. When I heard the water management district, considering, removing conservation area, that was alarming. This is the first I heard of that, actually, although I'm usually up to date on some of those things. But I was also recently involved, and I mentioned this at some other meetings, that sometimes zonings can, not only do they get changed, but they actually can get changed in a way that I don't agree with the process, meaning it can be done not in the public's view. And I mentioned this last year, and it came up recently, and it's relevant because it helps us and helps me do my job here. If I know that, hey, this area is conserved because it has an easement on it, is conserved because it's zoned this way, or, whereas if it weren't, then I would leave it alone. Whereas if now I know, hey, all land zoned, not maybe conservation, but something akin to that, can be easily switched to just a PUD that can be built on, then I will say more likely that we should work harder to make that acquired or change that zoning. So my actions change based on how I understand things. So some of the staff probably is aware that, yeah, there's a process that is called the administrative rezoning, where again, the the county staff, not even to the knowledge of like the county council in some instances, can rezone things to, essentially lose their protections. That's worrisome to me. And it happened recently. And I believe that some of the staff had looked into it. And I was essentially, just as a private citizen, told that I would get an answer, and I never did. And I think the public deserves to know how that process works a little bit more clearly. So I'm happy to like share that email with you guys afterwards, I can forward to you. But basically, I just want to ask if the maybe the legal team more than any other team, although the land code and development team could respond to my request that I was essentially promised, not by anyone here, again, no one on Volusia Forever is, but these other staff who work for the county had said that they would let me know, and they never did. And I'm not trying to just be like I want my answer, but like, do you feel that we should know this, and that how this administrative rezoning process works? And maybe in my example, again, I can share with you guys where I saw this happen, and I still don't have a good answer, because I would like to know. Could you guys get me that answer or help?
So please don't email each other.
No, I email to you, all right, and then you distribute to the board, I suppose, but yeah, I don't.
I don't know the case you're talking about, but as a process, I'm good.
If I can, Marianne.
Jessica?
Just some thoughts generally, and I'm going to tie into zoning because I'm a zoning lawyer. I think that I see Volusia Forever as one tool, hopefully among many. And we have science-backed criteria that we have vetted, and I agree that we should relook at, because I think a lot of it does deal with connected systems, furthering the goals of previous projects. And there are situations, I think last cycle we had small lots that we brought on that were higher in ecological function maybe than what we saw today. So I'd like to see function versus connectivity as well. So something is smaller, it's not connected, but it still serves that function in the ecosystem, that would be good. I look at zoning and land use specifically as another layer of protection above what we have potentially. I know what you're talking about, Derek, where there's environmentally sensitive corridor is the designation, where honestly, I think the map is created based on a guess at where wetlands exist. And so the administrative adjustment that can occur, we've done, I think, one over the past 3 years, is where the wetland line is actually flagged in the field as something different. Staff can adjust that line based on the wetland and then a buffer. And so that is something that can change, but that's outlined in the comprehensive plan. And so, the conservation land use can't be administratively adjusted. So I think part of it is, or at least to my knowledge, Russ is on, he can correct me. I think part of it is education on how the different environmental protections under the zoning and land use work and what that flexibility is, so that when we see it come before us, we know the level to assess to that.
Another kicker in the process is a special exceptions request. PLDRC members are constantly being thrown a special exception request. And that's another area that, to me, can erode the protection that is there through the environmental systems corridor or through resource corridor type of zoning and land use. So there's a lot of things that go on. And I agree that we are one of a piece that are looking at all of these things. So it's something that we constantly have to be aware of. And it's something that's very difficult for the average citizen to follow. If I had not been on PLDRC for a number of years, I learned so much from that. And one of the biggest things I learned is how little I think the average citizen understands about how our government works. And it's something that we have to constantly strive to keep up with. And that's why I think it's great that we are doing this wildlife corridor workshop, because people need to be given an opportunity to try to understand how the government works. So.
I have a question for staff that's totally off the subject. So if you guys want to continue talking, I won't ask my question now, but otherwise I'm going to ask staff something else. Can you give an update on the property that was east of Beulah that was voted down by us because the state park was looking for funding from forever funds that were available to state parks. Do you know where that went at all?
This is the Frank Ford piece that you reviewed previously. Yeah, so we've been in communication with the staff, and they actually had an application process that they traversed through that went to DEP, and they were not successful in receiving that funding.
And pertaining to that, in February, I had a conversation with Jason Lauritsen, who's the director of the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation. And he pointed out to me that while they're all working for the corridor, there are pockets of wildlife in Florida that are important. And we have two particular ones in our county. One is in the northeast corner and one is in the southeast corner. That would be basically the Ormond Scenic Loop. And the southeast corner, I believe he's referring to down at New Smyrna Beach and going south. So I'm just letting you guys know that, as Derek said, pockets of wildlife are important, and sometimes you can even add to those pockets. It did not seem that when we developed our criteria, not reading into anything, it has to meet the criteria. It just didn't seem like we developed criteria for pockets or for, I mean, I kept bringing up, you start connectivity, we didn't just wake up one day with all the lands connected. We have to start connectivity ourselves. And while I understand not buying random land and it having to meet the criteria, you can't start connectivity if you don't start somewhere. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Okay. Well, Derek, I think you brought up some good questions probably for that workshop coming up in August. I mean, that would be an interesting context to really explore some of those ideas. Well, we have some people there who can speak to pocket values for population. So.
Thank you.
The Florida Wildlife Corridor is specifically for the Florida Wildlife Corridor, but we did just have a conversation about pockets that were not in the corridor. So I don't want to mislead that that's not their representation. If there's a pocket in the corridor, yes, but the pockets we were discussing were actually outside of the corridor, but in our county still.
Okay.
So yeah, just to clarify, can I get confirmation that staff could at least provide me before that meeting their interpretation of the administrative rezoning? I mean, Jessica and properly, explain some of it, but for instance, that did only talk about wetlands, and like I care about scrub habitat, and that doesn't seem to be like value during that. So you guys, are you able to, I mean, because I don't want to give you like more work, but, and if you say, it's outside.
Are you asking for something other than what's available?
Yes, I am. And so that's why I was wondering if I like.
And that's what I'm trying to understand what that would be.
So it is an interpretation of how the administrative rezoning happens in the county specifically, because I have talked to other environmental attorneys and they're also confused at least part of this, including, the valuation of forests and so forth and citizen participation. And again, in my one example that came up just a few weeks or months ago, that's one possible way to do it, but it appears there's some wording that basically I'd like to know and be able to then discuss at our next meeting.
Hey, Madam Chair, this is Russ. May I speak?
Yeah, Russ, please weigh in here.
Hey, Mr. LaMontagne, thank you for the questions. In reference, so this isn't the staff that would be given an administrative interpretation of the zoning code. Do you know who on staff you were talking to before?
Yes, so he should be one of your colleagues. I was promised verbally that I would be given a written response by Mr. Soria at a meeting that we had several weeks ago. And he did verbally sort of explain it, but I didn't follow it. And all I'm asking for is he's already done the work regarding this administrative rezoning, again, of our lands and the protected factor. So I just want him to give a response. I sent 3 emails to him and he has failed to respond. I don't know if he's.
Yeah, no problem. I'll follow up with Paulo. I'm sure he's got an email ready to go for you, and I'll have that followed up. There also was, as you're probably aware in the situation, I know you're speaking about a couple meetings ago, an on public meeting discussion about this same issue. I don't know if you had the opportunity. I don't know if you were, I can't remember if you were present at that one or not regarding that rezoning that came up. I know the property you're talking about. But if you get a chance and an opportunity maybe to go back and take a look at that as well, because I believe the process was discussed at that time, but I'll have Paulo follow up with your request.
Thank you very much. And I was there, and at least if it's the one I'm thinking of, and I still, I maybe I'm just not understanding it, but I would like that response. I appreciate if you can get that. Thank you.
Yep, I'll follow with Paulo.
Jessica.
Unrelated question again. Do we need to sign this and leave this for staff?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So the score sheet that you were given, if you could record your votes, we'll have Sarah put the spreadsheet back on if you can't remember, like me.
Please put it up there.
So just for public record, sometimes we get asked how individual staff members vote, and we want to make sure that your votes align with what we have on the screen.
It's right behind the maps on the first tab. I think it's the third page after the overall maps. I keep taking notes on mine when I.
And we'll make it bigger next time.
Okay, I'm still looking for the form.
Hey, y'all, excuse me, but while y'all are talking, those first three votes on that sheet, I was voting yes. I was even screaming yes, but nobody could hear me. But I would like my votes recorded as yes on those first three parcels that we had a problem with on communication.
Thank you, darling. Got it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, now I can't read it. Okay, so while we're recording our votes, is there any further discussion? If not, we stand adjourned. Okay. This is a big one. Can I just borrow your pen for a minute?